I recently built this custom fast attack vehicle and I wanted to use a battery which gave me good run time, but I couldn't get a battery to fit that was bigger than 3,500 mAh, and in my experience that won't be enough drive time. For a lightweight grasshopper, yes, but not for this buggy. I could easily go bigger by running the cables outside the body, but to me that just looks a bit messy, and the original release never had that, so no. After some research and chats with Pete Wiley and Mark Bryan, I bought a LiPo, only to find it wouldn't fit despite disguising itself in the shape of the original Tamiya style batteries. Mark managed to squeeze the same battery into his wild one, but the battery door is a little bit more forgiving on that model. But I once had a bad experience cramming batteries in where the cables were under too much pressure. Over time I'd wear, with the cables being exposed. So that puts me off. So I went with something Pete suggested. Well, almost. The battery's just turned up, and it's nothing like the traditional shape of the Tamiya style batteries I am used to. Apparently, they go by the name of Shorty Pack, which is seemingly way cooler than Box Pack or Rectangle LiPo hardcase battery. I am expecting some complications, as this is not the same battery as the one Pete used, but if there is one thing this hobby teaches you, it's problem solving. The battery dimensions are the same, but there is a difference which we'll take a look at. I'm sure you guessed I'm a LiPo newbie, and from what I've learned, it's best to keep them stored in an ammo box as well as a LiPo bag, so I'm doing my best to stay safe. Despite looking similar to the recommended battery made by Turnigy, there is a difference. The benefit of the Turnigy LiPo is that where you plug the cables in, it steps down, so they probably don't affect the height of the battery. The one I bought, they protrude out the top, so it does affect the dimensions. I didn't notice this subtle difference when I ordered it, so hopefully it's still going to fit. Using a Hobbywing 1060 ESC, the leads are shorter than the ones you get on the Tamiya ESCs, and together with this XT60 connector being so big, it doesn't leave much flex to work with. It just gets in the way unless I shove it in the gap under the driver. But for now, let's just see if the actual battery fits on its own, whilst I consider removing the XT60 to swap it out for a Dean's plug. Well, it's a good start. The door shuts nice and flush. Let's eye up the size difference in these plugs. The Dean's plug is less than half the size, which would give me more flex on the cable. Right, decision made. I'm going to swap it out. This means removing 5 screws to be able to take out the driver and access the ESC. This Tamiya screwdriver set is handy to have, and there are 2 versions you can get, red or blue, and they're slightly different. Tamiya screws are JIS, and that stands for Japanese Industrial Standard, so it is best to have the right drivers so you avoid stripping the screws. It's handy to be able to lift the driver's arm to gain access here. Check out my customised FAV video for details on that, link below. I find the elastic band really fiddly to remove and install, but that's why it works so well, I guess. Next I'll pop off the motor wires. Now to remove the ESC, and it won't be easy as the tape I use to secure it is really strong. It's by far the best stuff that I've ever used. Unplug the ESC from the receiver, and now to unstick the on and off switch. God blimey, a bit more leverage is required here, so I'm going to use this screwdriver. I told you this stuff sticks like mad. You really got to go at it. Once unstuck, you hold it in your hand and it's like, what was all the fuss about? Because yeah, it's a bit tacky, but it's not as sticky as you'd expect after having to use so much leverage to remove it. Oh, better grab that last bit from behind the switch. Time to bring out the soldering iron. This thing heats up pretty quick, and the gun-like design makes it easy to use. I don't solder very often, so don't expect any pro tips, but I'll give you a couple of basics as I go. Removing the existing connector is easy. You just got to add heat and wait for it to drop off. I better remove the cover from that XT60 before I forget, and get some heat shrink on as well, before I solder the Dean's plug. Too many times have I soldered without remembering to put the heat shrink on first, and that can really get on your This little thing is called Mr. Jig, and it does come in handy to be honest, but it's only available at certain retailers. I've since found another jig which looks good and possibly better, so I'll link that one below. First step is to tin the connectors. You add solder to the side which has a little dent in it so it helps give it a bit more purchase. Then you tin the wires, so when you solder them together you should get a good connection. Here's a tip, clear your workspace of anything that might get in your way, such as this tube of solder, so you can actually concentrate on what you're doing. Not the best tutorial I know, but like I say, I'm no pro at this, and you're better off watching a dedicated video on soldering. But maybe seeing me muddle my way through will give you a little bit of faith that you can do it. One down, one to go. I'll just arrange these wires so they annoy me a little bit less. Assuming you haven't already left the video, let's switch the camera angle to keep you engaged. How's that for a dynamic shot? FPV style. Let me know what you think in the comments. All feedback gratefully received. Right, the cables seem secure after checking them way too long. Probably because I wasn't expecting it to be that easy. Now we can apply the heat shrink. I find that using a lighter is the best way to do this. Well, it is for me anyway. Just flash a bit of heat over it on all sides and check that it's snug. You can buy these ESCs with Dean's plugs already attached, or whatever plug you need for your RC, so I'll add some links below in case that helps you out and you want to avoid soldering. This is the tape I use. When I bought it at my local hobby shop, the guy told me it was the best stuff they had, but don't touch it with your fingers or you compromise how sticky it is. So with that in mind, I sliced through one layer. It is tough to cut, so it's not like you're going to easily go through it first time, and I've never cut through far enough to hit the layer below. Notice I can totally guess the amount to fit the ESC perfectly. It takes a long time to get to that level, so don't be hard on yourself. Get yourself a ruler. Right, I'm going to leave it stuck to the blade and then apply it to the ESC so I avoid skin contact. See that? A perfect fit. Now to put some tape on the power switch. I'm still learning the skill of cutting the perfect amount by eye for the switch, and you can see here that it's a little bit too long. I score it to trim it and then stupidly aim the blade towards my hand. Never do this. I'm just showing you what not to do. Right, that's done. Now I'll put this tape in a bag so it stays fresh and free of dust. I also use the blade to remove the backing tape so I continue to avoid contact with my skin. Did that guy in the shop think I had mad greasy hands or something? I'm starting to feel a little bit offended. Bit more tape to remove where I made an extra slice and we're good to go. Safety first. Always cover your blade so you don't lean on it and cut yourself. Let's get the ESC positioned. Oh, I need that blade again to remove the backing off the tape for the switch. Don't worry, I did put the cover back on the blade. It was just off camera. Honest. Right, that's stuck in place. There you go. Access to the power switch. Perfect. Time to put everything back together. The easy way to remember which motor wires pair up is black and blue. Because if your wife finds out how much you spend on this hobby, that's going to be the result. Let's get the screws back in. When it comes to putting these screws in, just hold the back of the cage, and as with all screws going into plastic, don't forget to let the screw find the threads first before tightening it down. A good way to do that is just back up the screw a little bit and you'll feel it drop into the threads. So far we're looking good. I tried the battery in the car with the power leads attached and the added height did cause a problem. Also, with the battery shoved right to the end, it was lifting due to these little triangular bits in the battery tray. Time for the bootleg Dremel from Lidl's. Yeah, I'm cheap, I don't hide it. I'm always on a budget, what can I say? Well, that was pretty easy to do, and it didn't take long, but I also had to shave away a recess either side for the power cables, otherwise the battery wouldn't sit flat. One issue I'm still facing. I need the battery to be forward a touch to allow this part of the battery door to engage properly, otherwise it doesn't sit flat. I have some of this open cell self-adhesive foam, and I've cut a small piece off and attached it to the side where I need to push the battery away from. I didn't place it right in the corner because this part of the battery door needs to be able to fit in there. Okay, let's try it out. It should have solved the issue. There you go, it sits fine. And the cables being run like this keeps the battery in place. Look how secure it is. I'm happy with that. The weather's freezing here at the moment, so if you enjoyed this and you want to buy me a coffee, tap the link and you'll be supporting future content, including this buggy in action powered by a LiPo and Technogold motor. If you missed the first video where I cover all the upgrades, now's a good time to click here. Peace!